Okay, we're going to learn a Sicha from Shabbos Pinchas, but it's Shabbos Mevorchim, the month of Menachem Av, which is this week, for the year 1950, Tafshin Yud, which is the early years, means prior to the Rebbe officially accepting the Nesius, the leadership. Okay, so the Rebbe says as follows: this is Sichos Shabbos Parshas Pinchas Mevorchim Menachem Av Tafshin Yud 1950. Oides Chodesh Av, with regard to the month of Av that we're entering in, Shebiyom HaShabbos Chodesh Zeh Mevorchim Chodesh Av. This is the week on Shabbos we bless the month of Av. Isa b'Maimer Shel Admon Marashab. There's a Maimer from the Rebbe Rashab, fifth Rebbe Chabad, Shom Dov Ber Shneresin Nishmasei Eden. Shlachura Einim Movin. He asks a question. Seemingly, it's not understood. Masha Churban Hoy B'Chodesh Av Shinyani Rachman. How is it that the month of Av, which the name of means father, which is compassion, is the month when the temple was destroyed, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed? This destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is seemingly nothing to do with compassion. It's the opposite of compassion. Av, the month of Av, Moira al Rachman. It's a sign of compassion, like it says. Just like as a father has compassion, etc., as the statement goes. The Gam Seder Oasis, the Tavis Aleph Beis, Av is Aleph Beis. And also we know, as he's going to explain now, that when the numbers are in order from Aleph Beis Gimel, Maila from above Lamata down towards Tuf, Moir al Rachum, that's a sign of compassion. Kedisa B'Zohar, as the Zohar teaches. Sheseder Oasis, Mata Lamaila, when we have the opposite, when the numbers are going backwards, from below up, is dinim, is a time of judgment and gvuras and severity. When it comes from above down, it's rachamim, it's compassion. Therefore, Chodesh Tishrei, the month of Tishrei, which if you look at the words Tishrei is Taf, Shin, Reish, the numbers are going backwards. Taf is the last number, then we go to the second last number, third to last number, letter, sorry. Ish Sidrei Milmata Lamayla, going from below above, Taf, Shin, Reish, the letters Taf, Shin, Reish, is the Olam Nidim. That's the month when people are being judged, because it's the month of Dinim. Chodesh Av, when we have the month of Av, which this is the question of the Rebbe Rashab that the Rebbe is quoting, which is going from above down, Aleph Beis, the first letter, and then the second letter, Shasidroi, that's the order of Nilmaila Lamata, from above down, symbolizing that things are coming from above down. Aleph Beis, which is a month of Racham. So again, the question is, why is the month of compassion the month that the temple is destroyed? Seems to be a total contradiction. The Rebbe says more than that. How could you say that a month that has so many negative things, pranias, so many things that we suffered from? For instance, Churban Bayis Risha, the first temple was destroyed. The Sheni, the second temple was destroyed. The spies came back, and when did they complain and cry? The night of Teshuvah. And that's why there was a destruction on the months of Av. And the rest of the other 5 things that happened on Teshuvah that are mentioned in the tractate Tainus of the Mishnah. Nikra b'Shem Av, in the same month of destruction and pranias, things that befell the Jewish people, is called the month of Av, which Moira, which symbolizes al rachum davka, compassion. This is the question that the Rebbe Rashab asks. And the Rebbe Rashab answers, the Rebbe says, the concept of listen, my son, to the musar, the words from a father admonishing his son, a person who loves you is the one who's going to give you musar, admonishment. Similarly, the admonishment is judgment. You're being harsh. You're talking tough, i.e., the destruction of the temples. But internally, as the Rebbe explains in many of the talks of the month of Av, it is in itself compassion. The musar itself, the admonishment itself, is an expression of compassion. How? The Rebbe explains. The Rebbe says the truth is, anything that happens from Hashem is in itself, by definition, compassion. From God Himself, blessed be He, like it says in Eicha. From God, bad things don't come from God. But it's not like bad things come from another place. Befrat, and Hagim, Amma Yisrael, specifically when we're talking about the Jewish people. These are God's children and His sheep. of his flock. Surely everything that God engages with the Jewish people and things that happen to the Jewish people, its source is coming from kindness and compassion. So what's the destruction of the temple then? So the Rebbe explains that there's revealed compassion, where you see clearly it's compassion. There's a level of compassion that's so great. The mile we say it's above the system of creation. And because it's coming from such a high place of compassion, it has to camouflage itself in judgment. It seems like judgment, like a father sometimes seems like he's being strict to one child or to the child, when really it's compassion, but he doesn't want others to know. Like the Rebbe says, what's this mean? That there's a compassion that's so great that has to camouflage itself in judgment, i.e. the destruction of the temple. So the Rebbe explains, why do we ever need great compassion? What's the need? What's the calling that demands that God has to give great compassion for the Jewish people? Is because we are in a situation of judgment. Things are not good. Therefore, God has to camouflage them, because he can't reveal the compassion to be obvious that God's compassionate, even though the moment demands its judgment. God created that the attribute of judgment is going to say, what are you saying, God? What are you giving compassion to the Jewish people now? They don't deserve it. So God says, so like this, when the attribute of judgment sees the destruction of the temple, it says, oh, see, this judgment, but doesn't realize that it's really compassion. The Rebbe says this applies not just to the destruction of the temples. It happens sometimes when bad things happen to someone, and a person is saying, oh, this is what's befallen me, something so bad. Really, if you look deep, you'll find that it's really compassion. It's just camouflaged in judgment. The Rebbe says when compassion encloses itself and conceals itself, camouflages itself in the attribute of judgment, and therefore the attribute of judgment feels satisfied. And therefore it doesn't come against. It has nothing to object. Everything seems according to order. There's judgment here. Then there's something. There's a silver lining here. And God can bring unlimited compassion. When it's camouflaged in judgment, and the attribute of judgment is going to be silent because it thinks it's a moment of judgment. So things that can seem like judgment is really great compassion. Now, if you close your eyes for a second and you think about things that go on in your personal life, you can identify this concept. It's not just words that make no sense. You see how things sometimes seem really bad, but really what's hidden in it is a gift. It's hard to see it maybe at the time. It's hard to see it maybe while it's happening. Maybe it takes a long time. Maybe it takes a lifetime to recognize it. But sometimes a person looks back and says that was the best thing that ever happened. And it was compassion. And it comes in different ways, different forms. Not everything is obvious and not everything is the same. But it's not a foreign concept. Therefore, the Rebbe says, that's why the month is called the month of Father, of compassion, because there is compassion. These things that happen on the 9th of Av, in the month of Av, it's only a garment of judgment. Where there's really great compassion that's camouflaged in it. There's different ideas about this, like it's brought down the Gemara. God took his anger out on stones and bricks, right? The temple was destroyed, the Jewish people remained. The Mishnah, the Talmud, the responses, all the Torah that we have is all post-destruction of the temple. The Rebbe says this idea is even more, it shows itself when it comes now, the month that we're blessing, the month of, like it's called Menachem Av. The word Menachem means the consoling of the Father. Which that's the name of the month, Menachem Av. You have to write documents according to the Torah. Kamoy, if you have to write a divorce, for instance. U'av, Eli Tevis Menachem Av. The Birchas HaChodesh Minhag Yisrael Torah Yishikoin Shmoy Shachodesh Menachem Av. There it says in documents you could write just the month of Av. But when it comes to the blessing the new month, we say the month of Menachem Av, consoling the Father. The reason is, why do we bless the new month? The month is going to come anyways. Why do we bless it? It's to bring down an energy into the month. Not just in the month itself, but from Shabbos and Baruch until the new month. So Shabbos and Baruch finishes this week. I think it's the 28th is Friday. 29th is 28th is Shabbos, is 29th. So it's a few days before. There's 1 or 2 days between Shabbos and Baruch. Sometimes there could be more than a few days. So from when you glance the new month, it's already bringing down the message of the month, which is the days between Shabbos and Baruch and the new month. There are days to get ready for the new month. Well, Indian, like the idea we're bringing down is the Yeshua for salvation, for consoling. Asher close Indian and when do you need to have Nechama? When things are difficult. The Nechama for something that was for the difficult. I know he's the idea of the Nechama is when we reveal that what seemed like difficult, this is a Nechama, this is a consolation for that difficult moment. That's why the month is called Menachem Av. The idea is Rachmu ben kvi shemis alim levush al din ella. Shachas rachmu ben begili gam lematim zeret v'achmu. The idea is not just to bring down compassion, the way it is enclosed in the attribute of judgment, but we want menachem, that we should feel consoled. When someone consoles you, you don't feel judgment, you feel kindness, compassion. That the compassion should be revealed. Yes, at the time when it happened, the destruction happened, maybe it was camouflage. But right now we want clear-cut consolation of rachmu, of compassion. I'm super. Whoever says the story, exactly sure how the story comes in. Shekshar Admir Maharashal Eitzel Av Vadmir Tzemach Tzedek Derech HaKetz Shramas Ashnas Tav Rishches. The Rebbe Marash, which was the youngest of the Tzemach Tzedeks, which is the third Rebbe Chabad, Menachem Menachem the first. He had son Shmuel Schneerson, which is known as the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Rebbe Chabad. He's the father of the Rebbe Rashab that we just learned about before. So he once asked his father that we know that there was a case, there was an end of days, meaning when Mashiach should come in the year of Tav Reish Ches, which would be 1848. And Mashiach didn't come in 1848. So he asked his father, why didn't Mashiach come? It was a case. It was a day. It was a day that was supposed to. It was an auspicious year for the coming of Mashiach. But Aviv Anohu, the Tzemach Tzedek answered the Rebbe Marash, "Was willst du? What do you want? What do you think Mashiach is? The Mashiach means the revelation of the inner part of the soul, that the inner part of the soul is revealed. That year, Tav Reish Ches, 1848, is they printed the Mevorchim, the Alter Rebbe, known as Lekutei Torah, which is on the Parshas Vayikra Midbar Dvarim, Shir Ashir, was printed. We know that was printed later. Torah was printed first. The first two, the Bereshis and Shemos of the Alter Rebbe's Mevorchim, known as Torah, was printed first with Megillas Esther, and then later they printed the Lekutei Torah. There's reasons. The printing press is not important what the reasons were, but they had it printed separately much later. He says, "What do you want? This is Mashiach. Mashiach is the printing of the Lekutei Torah that you can learn chassidus. How do you think you can reveal the inner part of your soul? So you learn chassidus. So the Tzemach Tzedek says, why are you complaining? So what did the Rebbe Marash answer back? That's not enough. That's a concealed idea. That's like camouflage. The Rebbe Marash says, we want Mashiach down in this world, in this space. I don't want to read about the ideas of the Lekutei Torah. It's very nice that the Torah is the Gil and Shema. We want Mashiach physically in this world. We don't want to settle. We don't want to settle you for a spiritual concept of Mashiach. The Rebbe continues in this talk. This idea, the month of Av, is that we want to bring great compassion. Either it's camouflage, the idea is menachem, that it shouldn't even be camouflage. We could talk about and understand the Tanya of the day. What day are we talking about? We look at footnote number 14. It's a Teshuvah Perek Ches, which is now what we're holding, and also now as we speak, the Teshuvah is part of the Tanya. This is what the Alter Rebbe says. When we talk about the 13 attributes of mercy, they cleanse all the blemishes. Like it says, it is able to hold the sin, fesha, and the transgressions, but not going to cleanse them. He asks, why then the Alter Rebbe uses this language? Why does he take of the 13 attributes, the noise of accepting the sin and the transgressions that get cleansed? And mashmas tevis v'chata is also the word v'chata, which is a obvious sin. Why is that not mentioned? The Rebbe says, 13 attributes of mercy. Rachman Gedolim, we're talking about great compassion, which is the 13 attribute. The Ma'alim say the Shtalshus has to come out of the system of creation in order to bring compassion and cleanse sin, because sin is sin. It's coming to cleanse even transgressions that are done willingly. Amazing. Which are from Gimel Klipas Atmes, which are the 3 levels of impurity. When it comes to chaddest, which is for a shaygig, for a sin that was done unwillingly, not intentionally, unintentionally. That's like a carbon chaddest. Therefore, you don't need the attribute 13 attributes of mercy. 13 attributes of mercy is for when things are amazing, even if a person transgresses willingly, knowing that this is something wrong, and they do it anyways. 13 attributes of mercy can cleanse that. So therefore, in this case, we're talking about something we need a deep clean. So we're not talking about the chaddest when it's talking about doing something unwillingly. But by Geras HaKodesh is explained also in the Geras HaKodesh in a later part of the Tanya. But again, the Goydel Ilul Tirs Tzaddik, when it says that what is the idea of the passing of the righteous, the Maimer Zal, Lama Nitzchah Parshas Miriam Parshas Parah, like we learned recently, that Miriam is mentioned after the death of Miriam is mentioned after the waters of the red heifer, of the Paraduma. It's come to teach you, Mar Parah Mechaperes Av Mis Tzaddikim Mechaperes, just like the waters of the red heifer cleanse a person and atone for a person, so too the passing of a tzaddik atones for the sins of the generation. When a tzaddik passes away, it cleanses from the 13 attributes of mercy, the generation. And it causes salvation, the opposite of punishment, amongst the people of the earth. Not in heaven now, it's in the earth. People find salvation because of the death of a tzaddik. In the smate mitten von arts, in the mamish, the low place of the earth. Artis v'chumris, the physicality. The chapel of Torah, the tone for the sin of the generation. Afgam alas dainis, even the ones that are done willingly, which come from gimel klipas atmei shelamat minega. Is when you have klipas naga, which is the more delicate or refined level of klipa of impurity. It's just like it's impurity that things are it's like where a shoygig would come from an unwilling sin. So then that's one thing. But even something that's a transgression that's done willingly, which is from the 3 levels of impurity, even that could be cleansed from the death of a tzaddik, which is like the waters of the red heifer that also cleanses a person from the deepest level of impurity. Just like the red heifer, and even the death, the impurity of death is cleansed by the waters of the red heifer. Even though it's much more impure, much lower than just what's called the klipas noga, which is the 4th level of klipa, which is kind of the power of klipa. Klipas noga is also things which are permissible. For instance, kosher food could be klipas noga if you can use it for the wrong things. So the Rebbe says, but when it comes to the carbon only atones for the sins. It's a halois man. Halois man means it's the female waters that go upwards to inspire God's reaction. That comes from the nefesh of Hamas, from the animal soul, but the place of Noiga, the place where it's not willingly, it's not a willing sin. Where also it comes from a place, why does a person do an unwilling sin? Also, there's some source to it. But it's klipas noga, it's not like the three klipas atmeas. Therefore, Admar Zok and Alter Rebbe is Mevorchim Menachem Av, that we're talking about 15 attributes, cleanse every blemish, even a severe blemish like from the 3 levels of impurity, something that's done willingly. He only talks about the words that describe the worst of the sins. Because when it comes to unwilling or unknown sin, even though there's a source to it, because a person who's on the highest level wouldn't even do a sin unwillingly, but nevertheless, a carbon atones. So why does the pasuk say the word b'chata? There's a time that you don't get cleansed. You only get cleansed if you do Teshuvah, you return. And Menachem doesn't cleanse. Those who don't return. To teach us means the pasuk come and teach us that if a person does an unwilling sin, you have to also atone. And if you don't atone, even if you do b'shoigi unwillingly, you're still not going to get cleansed in the Shabbat if you don't have Teshuvah. Because even a shogeg, unwilling sin, needs a kapar, needs an atonement, like Rashi says. So again, why? Because why would a person do a sin unwillingly? Is because something in overcomes the person, even though it's not your consciousness, and even though it doesn't have your awareness, but it comes from somewhere. Like it says, the tzaddikim, on the contrary, that are very holy, don't do a sin. If you never gave an opening for the nefesh of Hamas, for the animal within you, then they would deceive and the mistake would have happened. We're talking about when you do Teshuvah, and how could you do Teshuvah through the, so when you're doing even the transgressions willingly, through the 13 attributes, the 13 attributes are revealed, Linka to cleanse, Linka is called to cleanse all the blemishes. Therefore, now we're not talking about the shogeg. Because here we're talking about the more severe sins where you do Teshuvah. Because the only reason we add the Rebbe says, is talking about a person who doesn't do Teshuvah. Then that person doesn't get cleansed, even if though the sin was done unwillingly. We're going to stop here in short class. And we'll continue back and forth between this and the Maimon. I think we'll finish the Maimon tomorrow, which is Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, we'll finish this talk.